who are not part of the coaching journey, it is a community of coaches, and we are at different stages of our journey. We are learning, growing together, and supporting each other. We also run a lot of educational initiatives, learning initiatives, and host stalwarts like Marion. Yash will be putting up information about coaching journey in the chat box, but let's talk about why we are here today, to learn from Marion Franklin, a coach and author extraordinaire. Before I introduce Marion, I'd like to run through a quick basic hygiene point. Number one is, please mute yourself if you're not speaking. And I request you to raise your hand if you have anything to add, so that we can, reach out to you and you can respond. While Marion does not need any introduction, she is an MCC since 2006 and is a passionate coach and mentor dedicated to empowering fellow coaches and therapists through her unique ICF accredited programs and laser focused approach. She's the author of The Heart of Laser Focused Coaching, where she guides clients towards transformative breakthroughs, fostering clarity, confidence, and growth. Her expertise extends to the corporate executives, entrepreneurs, and individuals navigating complex relationships. She's a sought-after expert and the co-author of 7 Simple Secrets to Successful Workshops. Marion also holds a master's degree in business and education. Her philosophy about coaching is that coaching is a way of guiding people to see things from a new perspective, have new experiences, and a way to see what's possible as opposed to what's happened. Marion, thank you again for being here today, so late in the night for you and with all the confusion. I do want to add that the CJ Book Club just wrapped up reading The Heart of Laser Focus Coaching last month, and you agreeing to speak with us is just serendipitous, to be honest. Before I hand over to Marion, just giving a quick agenda. Marion will be talking about the why and the learnings from her book, The Heart of Laser Focus Coaching. We will then open it up to stage for question and answers, and Marion will play a recording for us, and then we'll go into another round of question and answers. All right, Marion, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dipali, and sorry about all this confusion. Yeah, I was just going to say, before yeah, so I also wanted to add in the introduction that I have a new book that just came out, and it's called What Would a Wise Person Do? And it's now in audio and paperback and Kindle. And it is a way to deepen your understanding of human behavior, what your clients do, what you do, what the people around you do. So I just wanted to put that out there because it wasn't in the introduction, but I'm very excited about this new book. So, yeah. Okay. So, and now we're here to talk about the laser focus coaching, and you've all read the book, or I'm hoping most of you. So I don't want to have to repeat a lot of things that you've already read, but then again, it's always nice to talk about it. So I'd just like to start, and I'd like to ask you a question, and you can just raise your hand or call out, or whatever you need to do to answer the question. And the question is, what makes the difference between masterful coaching and, we'll say, mediocre or just a regular coaching? So what do you think makes it masterful? Anyone?
Yeah.
Can I take a shot at it?
Sure, please.
So I would say it's the depth of self-awareness that comes for the client as a result of the coaching.
Okay. There's definitely self-awareness. Yes. All right. Okay. So, Kavitha, you're saying the client's feedback, and I'm going to say no to that one, simply because I have a theory that the client is so happy that somebody is listening and they think you are walking on water and you are the best thing that's ever happened to them, but it doesn't mean your coaching was fabulous. So I just want to say that. So, yeah, I put that out there. Exploring below the surface, the depth of self-awareness from the client. The client's, oh yeah, okay, focus on the who, yes, but what does that really mean? We'll talk about that.
Can
Where
I
the
say,
client, yeah,
if the result after the coaching, if it is long sustaining with the client, like that
yes,
session
yeah,
can be
something
there.
that's, yes, a totally permanent change in their thinking, absolutely. Where the client feels they are in control. Yeah, I suppose. Effortless, yes. Aha moments, yes. Where the client feels they're in control. I wonder what that's all about. That comes up with, okay. Full partnership with the client. We don't even know what that really means, but ICF uses those terms. So, let's see if there's anything else here. Silences, yes, to give the space to speak, immediate attention toward the core. Okay, well, immediate attention toward the core point or issue. Yeah, that's kind of questionable how immediate, so we'll get to that. The client's perspective has shifted deeply and they're not the same person. Absolutely, Shankar, you are correct. Okay, and who is going to say something? Shivani?
Yeah, I think there's a term my mentor used to use. He says when a coach can be present by being absent completely in a conversation, then the coach
Perfect.
is masterful.
I love that. Yes, because our job is to facilitate. It's not to be part of it. It's just to make sure that the client is getting what they need as we go along. Very nice. I like that a lot. Okay, so let me add a few things to that. So when we talk about the who, that's coaching terminology, right? And I am so against any jargon, any coaching terminology, just because it's what ICF says, but we don't really understand what that means until we learn to separate the problem from the person bringing the problem. Now, I hope that's clear. And I would like a lot of you to come on camera, because if I'm on camera at 11 o'clock at night, you can be on camera at 8 in the morning. And it's just nice to see if you're paying attention. No, I'm kidding. So what the who really means is that all of your questions are about your client. They're nothing to do with the story. You never need more information about the story. Everybody thinks they need to understand. So what's really going on? What did he say? None of that is needed. All you need is to focus on the person. Who are they in the situation? What are they thinking? How are they behaving? What's going on for them? That's your total focus for your questions. As I said, no jargon. Don't use coach. Don't sound like a coach. Every conversation, and I mean this so sincerely, should sound like you're talking to your friend at lunchtime. So imagine sitting with your friend who's talking with you and you say, so who do you have to be in order to, who says that in real life? Nobody. So, in coaching, it doesn't even belong. It's more like, what are some of the characteristics that you think are needed in order to achieve or to be like that? Or that I'm okay with, because that's real talk. That's the way we speak. But I really want you to be careful not to do this I sound like a coach thing, because it really detracts from who you are authentically. Okay. in the beginning, coaches are very attached to getting results. Oh my gosh, I hope there's a shift. I hope the client has a new action step. I hope. And what I'm here to say is that they will get results, but that's not the focus of your conversation. That happens because of the conversation. So you're not aiming for those results. You're not aiming for an action step. You're aiming for the client to think differently about their situation. That's the aim. Well, I hope that's clear. And you'll have plenty of time for questions, I promise. Okay, let me just keep going here. Formula. So when you learn how to coach, this is so ironic, and I'm just curious. Let me just see if I can go back to, because my view changed and I can't change it back. Yeah, I can, to see you. Okay, here's my question. How many of you, just quickly raise your hand, how many of you are MCCs? Okay, and there's another page. I don't know if anyone's raising. Okay. All right. So when you look, so here's the irony. When you learn how to coach, you learn a particular way of doing it. You have to get the agreement. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to make sure about that. But the irony is, in masterful coaching, there is no formula of any kind. You do have to get the agreement, but you don't get it until after you have explored and until you reach a point of understanding what's really going on. So if you ask the client right away, what do you want from the conversation? You're already wasting a question, because they will answer it, but it might have nothing to do with how deep and where you go in the conversation. So your obligation is to to explore as much as you can to understand what is going on here, because it's usually not what they tell you in the beginning. So until you get an idea like, oh, wait a second, she keeps talking about her boss, but then she told me it was just like her husband. I wonder if this is really more about her husband than it is about her boss. Now you can start looking for the agreement. So you don't want to necessarily follow any kind of formula. As long as all the pieces of the conversation are in there, it doesn't matter where they are and when they show up. I hope that's really clear, and I hope I made that clear in the book, because I get really nuts when I hear boom, 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 like we're following some kind of checklist, because that's not coaching. That's just reading from a checklist and making up a question that works. Okay. Nobody should ever know where you got your training. So that means that there's nothing from your coaching training that shows up so obviously that I can say, I know where you went to school. That should never happen. And then I know I talk about the nosy curiosity versus the coaching curiosity. So nosy curiosity, what did he say in the argument? Nobody cares. The client's upset. That's all we need to know. But coaching curiosity could be, what was it like for you when you heard the response? Because I am focused on this one person and everything I can find out about this person. I mentioned in the book, and it's come up twice today in mentor groups, and that is the by the way comments. They are so critical, you have no idea. So I'm trying to think of my calls today. In the date call, oh, I know what it was. The person had this long story about, oh gosh, what was it about? Trying to remember now the whole thing. Oh yeah, trying to move to change business, the direction of her business somewhat, but also how much time she puts into and trying to make it right and so on. But in between all that, we heard, and I was the only one, by the way. I mean, there were many participants and they all had a chance to pick up on the same things. There was this little tiny, by the way. Well, I used to not feel so worthy when I did things, but I've worked through that. That was just a little by the way that got slipped in. But let me tell you, that was the key to the whole conversation. And then in the evening call, I'm trying to remember now what the by the way was. Oh my gosh, I wish I could remember. But in any event, the by the way comments are slipped in so slightly, like you barely notice them, but that's important. Now, if you say to the client, I heard you say, so for example, well, my husband and I had a terrible fight this morning, but I really want to talk about what's going on at work because it's just been such a problem and I've been so concerned about it. Wait a second. Why did this person tell you they had a fight with their husband before in the morning? Why? Because there's something about it. So your obligation is to bring it up. So I heard that you had a fight this morning with your husband and that you really want to talk about, you know, what's going on at work. But I just wonder if that has some kind of an impact with things that are going on at work. I don't care if you're right or wrong, but you have to ask. You cannot ignore those by the ways. Even if the client says, but I want to talk about. You remember in the book, I put an example. I'm feeling so vulnerable and this is hard to share. But what I really want to talk about is blah, 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 finding the right teacher or whatever it was for the swim class. I don't remember the story in the book. But wait a second, this was all about what's making it vulnerable and hard to share. That's what the whole conversation really was about. So don't ignore those little by the ways that get slipped in very secretly, very quietly, but they're so important. Okay, the 1%. So I have heard so many coaches, I'll take the question in a moment, hold on. I've heard so many coaches who say, oh, that's so wonderful. You've almost got it finished. That's great. No, that's not important. I mean, it's very nice to acknowledge, but it's not important. What's important is, wait a second, why isn't it totally finished? What is it? What do you need to get to that end to make it complete? That's where the coaching goes. The coaching goes in the piece that isn't complete. I've almost got it. Okay, so what are you going to need to get it completely? Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm now about an 8. Well, an 8. What do you need to make it 10? That's where the coaching is. It's very nice that they've gotten as far as they have, but that's not where the coaching goes. Coaching goes to the piece that hasn't been addressed yet. Okay, I'm trying to read the name. GC, is that it? Am I saying that right? Probably not.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, Marion. Nice seeing you for the first time. So one question. So you were telling that we should not get into the agreement before exploring the situation. How do, as a coach, I know that I have explored the situation completely, or this is the right time to get into the agreement? How do I know?
As soon as either you have no idea where it's going. Well, wait a second, we've been talking about this, but what does this person want from me? And why am I here? What is my role as the coach? So that's one time for sure. And that happens a lot when we say, wait a second, what's really going on here? Now it's time to ask the client, where are we going? That's one. Another one is when you hear maybe more than one thing and you ask them what might be the connection between all of these, and then they tell you something, and then you ask about it, and now you're thinking, wait a second, this isn't exactly making sense. So I heard this, and this, and I'm wondering, what is it that you really need in the conversation, right? So as soon as you're finding yourself either, I have no idea where we're going, or what I'm doing here, or what my role is as the coach, or something isn't quite adding up for you, or, oh, now I think I see what this is more about. So it sounds like this is much more about such and such, and not really so much about da da da. So what is it that you want in this conversation? You see? So there are different clues like that.
Thank you.
Okay. What else? Okay, let's talk for a moment about my absolute favorite thing in coaching, which you're going to hear, and that is silence. And somebody brought that up initially, but I'm here to tell you, and I say this at every talk I ever do, I have never to this day heard enough silence. Never. The silence comes in many different times during a conversation. The first time that's most important is when you've asked a question and there's no answer. And what do coaches do? Oh, wait, let me rephrase my question. No. That is not the time to speak. You've asked your question. However it's landing, it's landing. Let it sit there and stay quiet. That's one time, for sure. Now, the client finally answers because you're not saying anything. And you know you can do this with your children in a car anytime. You ask them a question, they don't answer, you stay quiet. Eventually, they're going to give you the information, believe me. Same thing with anybody. You're in a confined little thing like a car. But anyway, so we want them to talk. We do not want to do the talking. So you ask a question and there's this quiet and you just sit back. Okay, I can wait. And then they start talking. And when they stop talking, and I am going to say this, and I really want you to pay attention, it doesn't mean they're finished. I always allow more time, even though it seems like they're finished. Especially if it took them time to answer in the first place. That's an even bigger clue that they're probably not finished. Because what we as coaches seem to not understand, we are not emotionally involved in their situation. We're not them, right? We're not the client. We're not processing a lot of things in our mind. We're not thinking about this the way they are. We're just sitting there listening to their stuff. So give them space. Another time that I hear coaches don't give the silence. When the client says, I don't know. If you ask them an information question, what day was it? And they say, I don't know, who cares? It's information. But when you ask them a question that's about them, what was it like for you? Well, I don't know. That doesn't mean they don't know. It means they're not going to quickly tell you. And so what is your job? Stay quiet. They do know. Now, if you stay quiet and then they find, and after quite some time, they say, you know what, I really don't know. And then you can ask them, what might help you to know? And they will tell you what would help them. I've never had that question not work. So it works. What would help you to know? And they will say, oh, maybe if I think about this, or if I want to, whatever, they come up with something. So don't take the I don't know as I don't know, unless you've asked a factual question. What's the capital of the country or something, which you're not going to ask. So they do know. They're just not ready to give it to you. So there is never enough silence. And when you hear this recording, that was a legitimate, real, honest recording that I did, you will see what I'm talking about. What else is there? Great. Okay, let's just go now to the two big questions that I always say to people to hold in mind. Why are they telling me this? That's how you catch those by the way comments. Like, why? Why did he tell me this and this happened? And then say, but I want to talk about that. Why? And the other one, of course, is what is making it a problem for this person? Because the next person would not consider it a problem. So what is making it a problem for this person? Now, even if you agree that it makes sense that it's a problem, you wouldn't have the same reason for thinking that as the client. The client has a different reason for whatever is going on for them that's creating a problem. Maybe it's something from their childhood. Maybe it's something that happened in some way in their history somewhere. Somebody once said something to them and it's still bothering them. You don't know. So always go back to what is making it a problem for this person. So the things we're listening for who is this person, not the situation. We're listening for what is really true versus their perception. So how do we distinguish? Perception is, well, it seems like, or my boss hates me. How do we know that has any truth versus it's the client's impression? Now, it could be true, but it just as easily could not be true. So we need to explore. And then we have coaches making statements like, if I leave this job, I'll never be happy again. How does one know that? You have no way of knowing that. So that's perception. If I eat the whole cake, I'm going to get fat. Really? I think that's, again, something, it's a belief, right? It's something that the person believes to be true, but really isn't necessarily true. Well, you're not going to get fat from eating the cake one time like that. But my point is that you listen for these kinds of statements. If I share my feelings, he will leave me. Well, what if you share your feelings and you start to feel so much better about who you are because you're not hiding from something? Oh, yeah, but he could still leave. Yes, he could. And I would say that. I would say, yes, he could still leave. But by the same token, he might not, and you might feel an awful lot better about who you are. So what do you want to do? That's the way I put it. Okay, and remember, you want to ask your questions with the word what. That's really important. Even though it might be hard to word it, do that. Okay, so I'm going to just stop here for now because I'm screwed up on where the timing is here. But I do know that we want to have some questions, and anything that I've said that you want to question, or anything that you want to question at this point. I need questions because they make me happy. So.
Marion, I'll go first while
Okay.
somebody comes up. Okay. So you talked about, see, the heart of laser focused coaching was about focus, right? But most of what you talked about is open conversation, giving the space for the client, right? I'm just trying to connect the two. While there was the focus really says that you try to get to the results faster, is one way of looking at it. But keeping things open actually means you're giving space for the client to come up with whatever they comes. So how do these two relate from your
It's
perspective?
not, it's laser focus doesn't mean faster. Laser focus means you're going for the truth. You're not wasting time talking about the situation. You're not wasting time asking questions that don't move the conversation forward. It's not about time. It's about going deeper. So anything the client says, you have to pick up on that. Remember the lead by following? You have to pick up on it and make them defend what they just said. I don't know where you just went, Sunil, but I don't see you right now. But, oh, there you are. But you have to question the perceptions, look for the truth. And that's what makes it laser focused. Leaving this, so I will tell you the little clip that you're going to hear was a 30-minute conversation that went very, very deep. And we finished in 30 minutes, and I have covered all of the competencies. So I'm just saying it's not about time. It's about the quality of the questions. Okay. So let me go with, oh gosh, Deepti before we get back to GC. Okay. This is hard for me, but go ahead.
Oh, that was very well pronounced. Thank you, Marion, for addressing us. So I have a question about this who thing, who the client is. So, I mean, I recently saw a live conversation with a senior coach conducting it. And he very, like, blatant sounds a very strong word, but very directly kind of asked, who are you? Now that sounded to me a bit too straightforward, too direct. And he's a senior coach, so I have no one to question him. But I feel like I cannot ask somebody, who are you?
No, here is what I'm going to say, and nobody's going to like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Almost all of the MCC coaches that put their coaching out on YouTube and whatever, and I mean this seriously, most of them are, in my mind, not really MCC. So I am going to say don't put a lot of stock into what they, their initials, because I have heard some, what I would consider PCC at best, that supposedly comes from an MCC. And I know it's a terrible thing to say, and I'm being very judgmental. Yes, I agree. But I feel like people put too much stock into listening to those and thinking that, yeah, that's not a question I would ever, ever even consider asking. So remember I said earlier, not who are you, but what is it about you that blah, blah, blah? Something that just sounds like a regular conversation. Okay. GC, you've been waiting, and then I'll come to Ken Wall next.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Marion. So, I'm actually very good in these silence, but only for one session, it kind of got me into problem. So what happened was, after the client said something, I was waiting, giving her enough time, and then she became restless and she took her phone and she started looking at it and all. So I was like, so then I asked, okay, so when do we begin? After some time, maybe after 20-30 seconds, then she just put it on me. So I don't have enough time for all that thing. Well, let's finish it off. So it
Okay.
backfired.
Okay. So GC, it depends on your question, because there are times, depending on your question, you don't remember what the question was, do you?
No, I forgot.
Because it's the type of question, like, what happened for you or something. Well, I felt really stupid when that happened, and I don't know, I felt like I should have done a better job. They're finished. And then you can say, okay, so what would have helped you to do a better job or something? So there are times where it makes sense. And there are times where it's, as you found out, it doesn't really work. And more typically when the question isn't really deep and doesn't really make them think a lot. Okay? Okay. Canwall.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. And so there is, in the book, there is a chapter about human behaviors, that there are a few patterns that we can observe for the coachee. And when I try to observe it, I get into my own head and I get distracted. So how do I really, and I also see merit in this, seeing these patterns. For example, somebody is behaving like an imposter syndrome.
Like what syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. So there are talks they are talking about that they're always demeaning themselves. So I see that pattern that automatically comes to me.
Okay, good.
The kind of patterns you have shared and the themes you have shared in this book that are really relevant. I could also relate it to myself. I also have so many. But how do I really remember that I have to identify that? Because every time I'm trying to match it, I'm getting into my head.
Okay, so the idea is to keep the focus on the client, of course. But when these ideas, why am I echoing suddenly? When these ideas come to your head, put them out there to the client. So I'm hearing what sounds like a pattern of blah, 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 whatever it is. What do you think? Just like that. So just put it back to the client, whatever's going on in your head. And remember that you and your client are not the same. You don't reach your conclusions in the same way. So you have to kind of make believe that you don't understand, because then you can be more curious. But when these little things tick off in your head, oh, wait, this sounds like a boundary problem, then say that. I get the impression that saying no is really difficult. So what's that all about? You see what I'm saying? Just put it on them. Get it out of you, put it on them. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Subramani.
Hey, Marion, you can call me Money. That would be easy.
Money would be much easier. Go ahead.
Sure. So I had a question on the coach's intuition, right? We talk about that intuition and non-judgmental observation coming into play at some point of time. And I find there is a very fine line between that and moving into the space where you could be leading a client sometimes. So anything you can help with that on?
Yes. So leading is when you have an idea and you just put it out there and it didn't follow exactly what the client said. That's leading. Leading is when you ask a question and there's a definite answer. Like, who has control here? We all know the answer to that. That's leading. In order to avoid that, you can lead by following. That's okay, which means take what they've told you and from that, make your question, if that makes sense. So if they tell you, it was an awful situation and my boss was screaming like crazy and and you're thinking, well, why were you so quiet during this whole thing? Or whatever you're thinking, I don't know. Take that thinking, like we were just talking about, and follow. So I can hear how hard that must have been with all that yelling and everything going on. What was that like for you when it was going on? You see what I'm saying? Just you're leading by following. You're trying to get them to now tell you more, but without telling you, you never want to say, tell me more, because that just means I want more story. So you never say that. Okay. So does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. So can I just ask a follow-up, a small, in the same example which you gave. So if this is the situation the client is talking about, and in that moment, I feel that I'm curious, does this play out similarly in other places for the client?
Oh, probably, and that's fine. Then you can say, I heard blah, 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 and I just wonder. But remember, you have to reflect what you've heard, not all of a sudden, oh, I wonder if this is in other places. No, I just heard da-da-da, and that's pretty common for people. So I'm wondering if that happens for you in other places, then you're fine. Okay? Okay, good. All right. I'll come back unless, Ken, while you're still have your hand up, is that it again? Because I'm going to go on and come back to you. Oh, okay. Ruma.
Hi, thanks, Marion. So my question is that in your book, you speak about how it's important to show empathy right at the beginning when the client is narrating the story. And I sometimes worry about, am I labeling an emotion which, or something that might not be true for them? Like, for example, that does sound deeply disturbing, or that does sound very frustrating. Now, if the client has not used that word, is that okay to show empathy in that way, or
Okay, so what you want to do is, it seems like it was disturbing, or it sounds like, or I'm getting the impression that it might have been really disturbing. So just kind of not saying it was this way for you, because we can't tell a client how they were feeling, but we can tell them how it's coming across to us. So it sounds like it was very disturbing. I don't know if that's, and I might say, I don't know if that's really true, but that's the impression I've gotten. So what do you think? Like that. Okay. And if you're wrong, don't ever worry about it. You know why? They'll tell you. Oh, no, I wasn't disturbed. I was angry. Oh, okay. What made you so angry? You see what I'm saying? You're going to get your answer.
all right.
So don't worry about being wrong. Okay, good. You're okay now, Ruma? Yes. Okay. Rajesh.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it right, Marion. Thanks so much.
Okay. I'm having fun with this, actually. It's very interesting to me because, these are all names I'm not typically used to. So this is great. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was really struck by the question, by this comment about keep it conversational, like the way you would talk to your friend or to your child. And very often when in these kind of conversations, the boundaries are lost between when you're telling them what to do and sometimes asking them what they are really after. So you're really mixing up a little bit of advice, a little bit of, hearing them out. How do you see, therefore, mentoring creeping into coaching in a conversational way? You slip into telling them, hey, why don't you do this? Is that permissible?
No, because if you ask me, why do you do it? What am I going to say? Because, and then I'm going to defend myself. You have to stick to what questions. That's number one. And you don't give advice because you don't know what's best for your client. Only they know what's best. So what would you like to see happen in this situation? Or what would be a really good outcome for you in our conversation? Or what, you have to stay with completely out of advice and keep it open. So you don't teach them, you don't mentor them, you just make them think. That's the whole key.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay, Shankar.
Hi, Marion. Good to meet you again. I have a challenge in challenging the coaching because by nature I'm a person who's empathetic, hold the space and all of that. But somehow in my mind, challenging the coachee versus unconditional positive regard, believing in their potential seems in conflict. So any suggestions on how to build that skill of challenging the coachee?
Yes, it's in the chapter in the book, 3 steps. 1, you own the observation. It seems like a person who blah, 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 blah. Or I'm getting the impression that. But you don't use the word you. That's a no-no. I get the impression there's some anger behind this. I'm getting the idea that this was not an easy situation, whatever. You just make it very broad like that. And then you give them a chance to respond. So what do you think? Then you must ask that little question. So first you own it. Then you don't use the word you, but you share what you believe is going on, and then you let them respond to it. So what do you think? And then if you do that, you can literally say anything you want. And I mean that, if you follow those rules. Okay, last question before we move on. Kenwal again, or is it Kanwal?
You can call me KP. It's Kamal. You can call me
What
KP.
is it?
KP.
KP. Oh, KP as in initials. Got it. Okay.
So I've heard a lot about that. We stick to the process. We stick to the process, but still we're not using any formula. So what is this process? As I understand, there has to be an agreement, and towards end, we are facilitating growth. Is there anything else which is differentiating between this becoming a formula rather than a process?
Okay, so all the pieces have to be there, but they don't have to be in a specific order. And they have to sound like you're just having a normal conversation, except you're not sharing your own stuff. So you're not going to ask. I mean, I personally start to get nauseous when I hear what would be a measure of success, because that's coaching terminology, right? What would help you to know that that really is the case? Or what would help you to know that you're really clear on this decision, or something like that? I can live with that. But the formula part is the coach shares their story. What do you want from the conversation? Okay, let's look at how we can fix this and get results. That's the formula. That's what we're staying away from. But yes, you need an agreement, but again, not right away. And yes, you need to have them shift their thinking but that comes from your deeper questions. And you might want to loop, which is important. So where are things at this point? Based on the fact that we started with this, where are things now? That's important. What about asking them for support? Who in your world can help you or support you as you figure this out, or as you make the plans to do this conversation, or whatever the thing is? So, and then the ending has to be collaborative, meaning, are you really okay to end here, or is there something else you need? You have to check in, not like, oops, time's up, we have to go. No. Okay. All right. So now I'm very confused on time, Dipali, but you can tell me if we're in a mess here or not.
We can move on to the recording, Marion.
Okay, that's what I was going to do now. So do I have share the screen
Yes.
privileges?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let me do that. Hold on. Audio. Share. Okay.
Hi, and just want to remind you that we are recording. Make sure you're okay.
I am.
Okay, so we have about 30 minutes or so. So what is it that we can talk about that is really significant?
Marion, your share is not started yet.
It's this.
What was that?
I said we're not able to see the share screen. Only the audio is.
That's right.
It
It's only audio. Yes, because I don't do video.
Okay,
I only do
perfect.
phone.
Thanks.
I only do telephone. So you're only going to listen now. You're not going to see me do this.
Thanks.
And I don't do it. I try to avoid Zoom. Well, I don't do individual coaching anymore, but when I did, I avoid it because I get very distracted. Oh, look at that background. Oh, look at her hair today. Yeah, I get so distracted with all those things, and I'm looking at the body. Yeah, I have to listen for those things. So it's just audio. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Go back.
It's this struggle I have about knowing enough, defining enough when it comes to elder care. My mother-in-law is currently in the hospital in Florida. I'm in Texas. My dad's local. He just got out of the hospital. But even when they're not in acute phases, they're both in poor health and declining. They're in their 80s, and I just really struggle with guilt for not doing, or resentment of doing, or just exhaustion, mental exhaustion. So that's what I hope we focus on.
All right. I get that on both sides. It sounds like there are elderly people who are have health issues. So, and then I hear that sometimes it's guilt, I guess, for not doing enough, so to speak, or resentment for doing too much. What does that even tell you?
Well, it tells me a lot, or all of this is in my head. I mean, in the sense of I'm conflicted about stuff. Yeah, that my thinking is causing me distress.
And what is this conflict?
You know, I've been thinking about this, knowing that you and I were going to talk, and I've got these ideas about what a good person or a good daughter should do, you know, and then these ideas of I don't know, I'm not like that, that I am bad or wrong or not living up to my ideals. Yeah, it's pretty nasty right now.
It sounds as though you have set certain standards, and they're not necessarily standards that come from within. They're standards that, like you use the word should. So they're kind of these standards that in your mind are supposed to be a particular way. So what's that about?
It's true, and I don't know where they come from, because growing up we were not in any way connected with like our grandparents, so there was no elder care. And I'm a power of attorney for my dad, so some of this is legit. But I look at how my husband is with his mom and his family, and he does not seem to be conflicted or feel the need to do stuff that I do. I hadn't thought about where it comes from, but I almost think it's something like growing up reading Little Women or these books. I just somehow got the message that of give till it hurts, even though I know that's intellectually, I know that's wrong. But I think where I'm stuck is I don't know where to look, because I look at my husband and he seems okay, but there's a part of me that kind of judges, like, how come you aren't sending your mom flowers, or why aren't we flying to Florida? She could die any day, it seems to me, but she may not. My dad, we thought he was going to die 3 years ago. He's still here, so the sense of urgency is I don't know how much urgency there is with it. But I don't know who to look to, because it seems like people have different ideas of what's okay with them.
Clearly, as you're mentioning, everybody has a different way. It's almost like everyone has a different way of coping with grief. Everyone has a different way of handling this type of situation with a parent. So what is it that you would really like to have from this conversation?
I'd like to know, I guess, at the end of this conversation, if I could know that I have some sort of something in myself to check about, is this too much or not enough, other than like full-on exhaustion, or like I can't do anymore. That's what I like, some calibration that I can check in with.
And what do you think would help you to figure out what this calibration might be?
What would help me figure it out? No, maybe I think if they're actually forgetting the calibration, if I could just figure out how to say no to the shoulds, and so that I can identify what I'm more comfortable with instead of what I should do, I think that would be useful.
Well, it's kind of an interesting concept, because you're saying, be able to say no to the shoulds. So when there's a situation that comes up, what happens for you? Like, where do you go with it? Like, I don't know, I'm going to make it up. Your father's being released from the hospital, or, something. Where do you go in your mind?
I go to, I am responsible, and I have to make up, because until a 6 months ago, I lived in Virginia, and my brother and sister were the ones driving him everywhere. So I have to make up for that. And so it's on me. And so I'm grateful when they can do it, but I ultimately feel like I'm the power of attorney. It's on my shoulders. And I'm in the hole.
What does that mean, in the hole?
Oh, that I need to make up for a few years of not driving him. Anyways, I'm laughing because now I'm thinking about, I live an hour and a half away from him, and yet I'm the one saying, like, I'll pick him up, and then they end up doing it, but then I kind of feel bad that I'm not doing it. And sometimes I have done it, but in a way it's ridiculous. I'm just realizing how much thinking I'm in the hole makes me martyr-esque. No one said I'm in the hole. I've just decided I'm in the hole.
And what is it costing you to believe that you're in the hole?
It cost me a lot of time. It leads me to ask for help less, definitely, and feel a little bit one down from them. Although, as I'm saying this, I guess I hadn't been thinking about this whole in the whole thing, but it really does affect the way I interact with them and with him, feeling I have to make up for something. But between the years between when my mom died and when he moved to Texas, I was going to Pittsburgh to see him all the time and helped. So I don't know why I think I'm in the hole. I had a few years of being more hands-on with him. So I guess I'm thinking that's definitely one of these shoulds that doesn't even make sense for me to be operating out of. But I hadn't really thought about this one. I'm writing it down.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording here. I'm going to tell you what happened so you're not left in suspense. She wound up talking about a friend of hers whose husband had died, and she also wasn't, completely crazed about running and doing for her husband. So she kept thinking, why am I so stuck on what to do with my father? And what she came to was, wait a second, I don't have to go every single week and feel so obligated and resent going. And I don't have to feel guilty when I don't go. So what she came to was, I can go when it works for me and when I feel like it's a good time to go. And then I thought to myself, I wonder if that's really true. So I did a test question, and the test question was, supposing it's a week you don't go, and that's the week that your father passes, what would that mean for you? And she said, I would be okay with that. I would know that I went when I wanted to go and I went enough time, and she was really fine. And then we could end the conversation pretty much. So I just, and when she said she was looking for that calibration, she was looking for how much, how little, that's really what she came to. And there was a lot, it was obviously a 30-minute conversation. You've only heard about 10 minutes, but I'm just telling you, kind of, it ended really, really nicely with her feeling really good. Okay, so Now, Dipali, do you want to share, or you want me
Sure.
to, or go ahead?
In the interest of time, we won't be taking any questions. However, if you all have any comments about the recording, we can take about 2 or 3. So we will wrap up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and if you still have questions, you can always send a note through my website, lifecoachinggroup.com, and use the contact form, and you can ask questions, and I'll answer you. Okay, so comments on the recording. What did you notice? Yes.
Yes, Shivani.
Shivani.
I think I love the question about the cost. You immediately shifted the perception from what am I doing to what am I not doing and what is it costing me? I think that brought a beautiful shift without you having to tell those things. You know, a lot of times we think that to bring this change, we have to tell them because we can see it and they aren't. So I think that question, I really loved the way you framed that question.
Very good. Who else?
Yes,
Shankar?
In addition to what Shivani said, right? The time in which you said the cost question is when the shift happened. So I think you deepen the shift. The silences, catching the should, and also the by the way comment. You didn't miss it.
And there were a lot more shifts, by the way, during that conversation. That was just part 1.
A lot of people in the comments have also mentioned silence as their observations and comments.
Yes, very much so. Yes, you really heard it. That's as I was talking about it, how it's never enough. And now you could hear she kept going, even when you thought she was finished. All right, anyone else?
Who says what will help you figure out was powerful?
Yes, that's an agreement question. That's an okay agreement question. Yeah, what could help you to figure this out? All right, anyone else?
There was at one time there was a chuckle in the beginning. I forgot the questions you asked, and she chuckled, but you didn't actually reflect back. What was this chuckle about? I was just expecting that to happen.
Yeah. Again, I'm keeping focus, right? I don't want to get distracted. And I only have 30 minutes and I want to keep going. And that chuckle to me wasn't as relevant as it could have been in some other kind of conversation. Yeah. So sometimes I would absolutely want to pick up on it, but here, no, because this is about your father and how you're going to deal with. Remember, I have to keep in mind where we're going in the conversation. I don't want to get distracted. And we're going to, how are we going to figure out when you should go and when you shouldn't go? What's enough? What's too much? Remember, she said, I just want to figure out enough. And you also noticed how I asked her, what do you mean by in the hole? I never even heard that expression. I had no idea what she was talking about. So I asked her. Once she described it, then we could move forward, but I had no idea what she meant. Okay, anything else before we stop?
Just one more, Marion, for me. It is more about the process. You mentioned when you started saying you mostly do off video and it's only an audio. Was this also just a pure audio? You were not seeing the person
Correct.
on the other side?
Yes.
Wow.
Pure audio.
So
yes.
how does that work? Because sometimes body languages are different from audio, and I find it very uncomfortable not being able to see the other person to judge just by their voice.
It's a crutch. When we learned how to coach in the 90s, we didn't have Skype, we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have anything but the telephone, unless you were in person. And then, think about it. You can't coach anybody else in the world because you can only coach people in your neighborhood. So no, I learned on the phone, and I learned how to hear the smile, the crying, the laughter, the thinking, whatever was going on, I can hear it. I can hear the person standing up, sitting down. I can hear it because that's how I was trained. And for me to look at the body language, I'm telling you, I would go like, Kinwall said, I would go right into my head. You know, it would just be so confusing to me. So I am fine with just listening. And I mean, really listening. Because as soon as you're listening and looking, you're not as focused. You're really not as focused. You don't hear the same things.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
I think we can go ahead and close, Marion. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Marion, especially at the last moment, in spite of all the confusion, for showing up and, giving us such beautiful insights from your book and the recording and answering all our questions with so much of patience. Really appreciate it. And a big thank you from the CJ community, Marion.
Oh, I really appreciate being here. This really was fun for me, even if I wasn't prepared. But really, it was fun. I loved your questions. And if you have more questions, I think Tinku might have another question, then please send me a note through my contact form and I will get back to you. Okay? Thank you, everybody. And please think about my second book, What Would a Wise Person Do? Okay.
All right.
I think it'll help
Thank you.
a lot.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So long, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.